Hi, I'm Denise and I'm the founder and therapist at Infinite Hope Counselling. Today I'm going to come on and do the third in my small series of videos around common themes and threads that are explored by my clients and pop up in the counselling room often. Today I'm going to talk about trauma minimisation. And this is quite an important topic to me because many of my sessions are around unpacking society's view of trauma, family's view of trauma, media's view of trauma that gets really entrenched in our thinking and being, and it impacts and affects how we see our own experiences of trauma and how we kind of make it as small as possible to process it in a different way. So before I start today, there are trigger warnings in the post above or the description below, depending on what platform you're watching this on. I'm going to reference sexual violence and trauma. I'm going to try not to get wrapped up in the bigger words surrounding those things. But if the descriptions of those topics are a trigger for you, then you might want to skip this video. Okay, so trauma minimisation. I feel as if this comes in kind of two categories. One of them is kind of our physiological response to trauma and why we minimise it. And the other one is the learnt minimisation. So I'm going to do the physiological stuff first, and then I'll go into the learnt behaviour. So if we experience a traumatic event, and that could be anything from domestic violence, sexual violence, bullying, witnessing a car accident, the list is kind of endless. We have to physically survive that moment in time. So if you're being attacked, if your life's at threat or risk, if you're heightened because you're witnessing something that's traumatic and difficult to process, we will live through that moment and our body will respond. We can go into shock, we can have all our adrenaline and cortisol rushing around, but we physically survive that. Now, to continue physically surviving that event, often our brain fractures our trauma memory or it squashes it. And what I mean by that is many people will come to therapy and say, I think something bad happened to me when I was a child and I want to come to therapy to have the exact picture. Or I remember parts of something, but I don't know the rest of it. And the truth is, with trauma memory, you may never have a full linear picture of the events that happened to you because of how they've been stored in your brain. So it's really important that we understand why our bodies do what they do. And also we minimise it. So for an example, if you witnessed domestic violence as a child, you could say to yourself subconsciously, oh, well, mum and dad always fought and it was only a couple of times and, she provoked him, etc., etc. And I don't mean that as a judgment, it's what we do to minimise. Now, the other side of this, which is really quite important that I see often, is the breathed in messages we get from our parents, from society, from the media, TV shows, and that is that it can't be called abuse because something happened once. I have so many clients who will say, I wasn't sexually abused, it was just touching, or I can't be sure, I feel like this happened, or I told someone and they told me I would stop being ridiculous. And it doesn't mean that these things didn't happen to you. It doesn't mean that you can't use that label. And I really want to make it clear that while the law has definitions that are really quite tight around certain wording, I think in counselling it's really important that you are free to express the things that have happened to you using the terms and labels that you choose for them, and that a good therapist is not going to correct you and say no, you can't call it that, because what's important is how it felt to you. The other thing is, often I will see clients who will say they didn't mean it, or the perpetrator was going through a difficult phase, or I'm confused because I love this person yet they did this to me. And all of those things are completely normal to feel. But also the language used in the media at present is really bad at minimising trauma. The word trauma is overused, traumatised is overused. So we don't ever get to the place again where we accept the full gravity of what we're saying when someone's traumatised or has experienced trauma. It's a bit like when we say people are a bit OCD. You can't actually be a bit OCD, and it's a debilitating condition for those people who have it. Or I'm a bit depressed. Clinical depression can see people off their feet for months and years. Feeling low is something different. So we breathe in the messages from the media and from TV shows and from the people around us that I'm traumatized, or well, that's not trauma, and it's oversaturated. So then we have this thing where our trauma doesn't fit neatly in a box. Someone's traumatized because of something they experienced, it doesn't match ours. So what we tend to do is say, well, it can't be that bad because there are worse people in the world than me. And that's something I hear all the time. Well, yeah, my abuse wasn't easy and it was really difficult, but actually I know someone who had it worse, or at least it wasn't like Jimmy Savile, etc., etc. And it's really important that you work through your trauma and you see it for what it is, that we don't either overinflate it or shrink it to make it more palatable. And that can be really tough to sit in the hard stuff, to actually honestly acknowledge and think about what you're saying is the truth and how it's happened. Now, I also think that it's important when we think of truth that we can only have our own truth, and that's also important to focus on. And often we'll make the narrative up about why someone's done something to us, but we can't ever really know. So trauma minimization is something that happens consistently, and you'll know because you'll see news stories, you'll watch reports, and there's a dramatisation show on at the moment about the Yorkshire Ripper, and I'm finding it very difficult to watch, not just because of the content of what happened to those poor women, but there are police interviews that are depicted on this dramatisation in the 70s of police literally ripping apart prostitute stories and telling them what did or didn't happen, or accusing women of being prostitutes when they're not. And it's so hard to sit with because they're creating their own narrative around these women's stories, and it's just wrong. So I'd ask you to sit with your own thoughts and feelings about the things that you've experienced and happened to you, and instead of minimizing them, to honor them. It's okay to say, this thing is so big I don't know how to deal with it, this feels huge, or oh my god, it could be this thing, and it's really hard. But that's why there's so much help and support out there. I'm also going to put a link at the end of this video to Rape Crisis, because they have a helpline that you can speak to someone if you're unsure about your thoughts and feelings around things you've thought and experienced. I would also recommend you reach out and talk to somebody if there are fractured memories, thoughts, feelings of things that might have happened that you're not sure of, and also to own the things that have happened to you as what they are in your eyes. It's very difficult when I work with male survivors who'll say, well, I was raped, but I can't say that because the law doesn't allow me to say that, because the definition of rape by the law is very static. So I think it's important about honouring your own experience and trauma and finding a therapist that will also hold that. So that's trauma minimisation. It's one of the most common things that I see in the therapy room. If this is something you've experienced, or think that you've got thoughts and feelings that you're unsure of what to do with or what to name, and you want help and support, please reach out and get in touch. And I'm going to do a few more videos in this series. If you've got any questions, any feedback, any other videos you'd like to see, please like and subscribe. I will speak to you soon. Bye.